What's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Please follow my Instagram at Russo Lifts, just in case something happens to this YouTube channel. You can follow, message, and you can watch my daily story content on Instagram. I'll see you there. What's up, everyone? It's Russo. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome back to the channel, and I sincerely appreciate everyone who's been running up the like, subscribing with the bell, and I know a lot of you guys are getting, involuntarily unsubscribed to this channel. I can see it in my analytics, so I appreciate all the new subscribers combating all the random people being unsubscribed from this channel for whatever reason. But if you want to support me on another platform that's not too much better than this platform, but still diversifies my following for my safety, be sure to check me out at Russo Lifts on Instagram. But today we're going to be tackling the big boy, the most popular Sarm on planet Earth, which is LGD-4033, otherwise known as VK5211 if you look it up, in the NCBI studies and such. So LGD-4033, I've put this one off last to cover because there's a lot more data around it. So far, how the data is played out as far as pushing it through clinical trials, which Sarm they're really dumping money into. Viking Pharmaceuticals has picked LGD-4033 and is trying to go all the way with it. In 2018, released the phase 2 trial results, which were human trials, right? I love that people say that there's no clinical human trials when, LGD-4033, there are a few, and they're all very promising, but showed great results as far as muscle mass, stopping muscle atrophy, which is pretty much the development of SARMs, is to prevent muscle atrophy, anti-aging, that sort of stuff in a clinical dosing setting, right? It showed a lot of promise with injury recovery, helping with that. And I will, have Dante throw up that study title for you to Google. But it is still being pushed along, right? These other SARMs that I've covered got funding. Basically, with Big Pharma, right, they got to make a shit ton of money off it eventually, right, if they're going to continue dumping millions of dollars into it. So even though it's good for bodybuilding as far as a clinical setting goes, it's not good. It gets cut. They invest into a different drug to push forward. Whatever makes the most money works, right? This is business at the end of the day, right? So LGD-4033, as far as, being on paper, the one being the best for clinical trials as far as muscle atrophy, cancer patients, people who have muscle wasting diseases. Aging being the one that everyone has, but that's what these compounds are developed for, right? Is to prevent that muscle bone density increases, as well as littler impact on the prostate than normal testosterone replacement therapy, normal hormone replacement therapy. You would, look to the SARM as the innovation because it's not binding with the prostate, or it's binding with the prostate at a much lower rate, which for males, as you age, right, everyone is destined to face prostate issues. It's just, one of the common things that comes with being a male. Your prostate goes as you age. So creating androgens that don't interact, grow the prostate, that's always a plus, right? So, right, like with something with like S4, I already did a video. I'll have Dante throw up the card above, right? The half-life is only 6 hours. So when you're looking at what these are developed for, a clinical aspect, right, it'd be really annoying to keep S4 stable, whereas something like LGD-4033 has a 24 to 36 hour half-life roughly. Obviously, depends on how your body metabolizes it for how long the half-life is, but that's a very easy half-life to keep stable for a patient to stop a muscle wasting disease. So that's why LGD has been pushed along even further, and them wrapping up phase 2 trials in 2018 with them being successful shows a lot of promise as this to be potentially the first SARM to make it all the way through the checks and balances and actually get seen in a clinical setting for muscle wasting diseases, right? So people with bone density issues, people with anti-aging, people with, cancer, dealing with muscle atrophy in that way. Anything as far as that is what this research is being built upon, to have that be applied in a clinical aspect. So that's why I wanted to wait on LGD, right? I had to read through all the new data. And for me personally, right, I'll get into the bodybuilding abuse aspect of LGD, but I did want to touch on, like, this is why these are being developed. This is why these are being pushed forward. And these are why, from a clinical aspect of just hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy, this is why there's a lot of buzz around SARMs, right? SARMs, I feel like they get misinterpreted because of the bodybuilding world as being not as effective, when in reality, right, they pose a lot less side effects on paper in the clinical dosings and poise a lot of potential long-term androgen replacement, TRT, HRT, in the future, right? Lower toxicity profile, oral administration, no injections involved, higher binding affinity to the androgen receptor than most steroids, super selective towards muscle and bone in obviously a clinical dosing setting. Obviously, when you go to bodybuilding dosages, these do not, all these markers do not apply. And overall, less prostate binding than just using all testosterone replacement therapy. So that's the main points I wanted to hit before going into the bodybuilding abuse category, is that this one, from what we've seen, is being the one that's pushed the farthest. Viking has made it apparent in my previous SARMs ban video, which I'll have Dante link above my last one, that Viking has the patent. Viking wouldn't be going around flexing that they have the patent, getting everyone to stop if they weren't planning to continue developing LGD-4033 along to bring it to retail, fully licensed with all the research to back, right? So that's promising news. As far as, I personally want to see a SARM get shown off in the light of why a SARM is so advantageous, right? I really want to see it make it all the way through. I don't really see a reason why I won't make it all the way through if it made it through phase 2, but we will obviously see. And I think that once LGD passes through phase 3, if it does, it proves the point that all the biohackers have been saying, when you're like, oh, well, you don't know the long-term side effects of SARMs versus steroids. A biohacker most of the time. Obviously, there are certain long-term side effects we don't know about and we will see down the line. But at the end of the day, right, it's an androgen operating in the androgen pathway. Most of the side effects we have already studied in the androgen pathway from steroids. A lot of long-term data there. And that these androgens are evolved to cause less side effects on paper. That's why there's so much money dumped into them. And obviously, when we go to the bodybuilding abuse category, when I discuss, my results with that, that's completely different from like the main ploy of what a SARM is supposed to be. My 2 cents, right? So with that all being said, let's dive into the bodybuilding abuse category. So that's why most of you are here. LGD-4033, I'm not the biggest fan of, right? Because it gives me, if you've ever run Dianabol, which is a steroid that is, you could relate the most to as far as the look it gives you and stuff like that. Like, I would compare LGD-4033 to like a mini Dianabol in the sense. But it gives me the moon face. LGD gives me the moon face. It makes me super puffy. And it has something to do with electrolyte imbalance or something, because I remember when I was younger documenting LGD-4033 only, basically I wanted to, get lean on it, right? I wanted to not, be puffy on it. I remember everyone in the comment section was like, oh, you eat like shit, blah, blah. This was when no one video documented it. This is when I was the only guy on the internet being open about, my abuse. And I won't say I'm the only. I was one of the OGs doing it, right? I don't want to discredit anyone who was also doing it at that time. But during that time, it was a lot different than 2021, where everyone, like, it's all in the open now because of the OGs who push a boundary. But, back in that time, everyone said I was eating like shit. All the nameless guys who, making fun of me, just being open. But anyways, I decided to eat under 100 grams of carbs a day for like a week straight. Still completely puffy. And it comes down to potassium intake to try and mitigate the bloat. But that's why I don't like LGD-4033, right? It's the only compound in the SARMs category, in my opinion, that gives you a straight up wet look, right? Very wet look. Now, as far as, the benefits of LGD, I've touched on them, I don't know how many times now, but I've touched on them, right? For me, LGD-4033 doesn't really make me, per se, crazy stronger. It increases the amount of working volume I can do. The pumps are insane. The nutrient partitioning is insane. And it increases my basal metabolic rate, meaning, like, if I do not eat to keep up with that LGD, like, I will look flatter and smaller on the LGD than I would naturally, because it has my metabolism so cranked. So that's some certain implications you need to know. Now, obviously, side effects wise, I've been reading and looking through the videos I've already posted on the overview, so I'll go into like the general side effects, right? So any synthetic androgen is going to skew cholesterol badly. I hope you would know that, but I understand that not everyone knows that. But your HDL is going to go down, your LDL is most likely going to go up. LGD-4033 isn't the worst SARM as far as impact on lipids. I would definitely say RAD140 has been the worst on my lipids by far, but it's up there, right? So got to keep that into consideration. And then as far as the liver toxicity goes, there is a decent amount of toxicity in the upper echelon dosages I'm talking about. Over 25 a day, I would say there's a significant amount of toxicity. I would say that if you have legitimate 4033 around 5 to 15 milligrams, there's not that much toxicity for what type of androgen it is, the power level androgen it is. I will make that argument. But, above that, I definitely see it being, have a significant level of toxicity as far as your ALT and AST liver enzyme values go on your blood work. So keep that into consideration. It's not like a 17-alkylated methylation steroid like Dianabol, where if you blast that for like 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, people have argued with me in the comments without posting any concrete finite data, but they've argued with me that your liver enzymes go down eventually. But for me personally, from what I've seen, right, something like Dianabol, something like Winstrol is going to raise your ALT, AST astronomically if you do it over 4 weeks. So something like LGD-4033 doesn't have that 17-alkylated methylation. So you can theoretically push it longer, and you see most of the people online do anywhere from 7 to 12 weeks with LGD-4033. Now, as far as natural testosterone suppression rate, LGD, you can see in the clinical studies that even at 1 milligram, which no one in the bodybuilding abuse category is going with 1 milligram, right? They're going with like, me personally, I've experimented with anywhere from 5 to 50 milligrams a day, right? So at 1 milligram, see significant follicle stimulating hormone decrease as well as luteinizing hormone decrease, meaning that in the bodybuilding dosages, it's super suppressive. I do not fucking know where these little Reddit guys who never post their physiques, right, get these like, oh, it's not that suppressive, you don't need a PCT. Like, have you read the data? Do you just think everyone's HPTA bounces back super easily? Like, telling people you don't need a PCT with that, or that you can get away with some over-the-counter, like, people DM me on Instagram all the time, and I'm getting pretty grumpy at people not following me before they DM me. Like, if you're going to spend the time to type me paragraphs and want my 1v1 time for free, hitting a follow button, in my opinion, is the least you can do on my Instagram. And then you getting salty that I answer, but I don't answer because you don't even follow me or support me, and you get grumpy at me. Like, come on now. Have some decency for me. Don't treat me like an information book. Treat me like a person and respect me. But anyways, I'll have guys message me their whole cycle, their plans with the cycle, why they developed the cycle, and what I would tweak. And a lot of guys are like, well, it's LGD, so I'm going to use this like over-the-counter PCT I found on eBay, and I look at it, it's got like Tribulus, and like it's just like you're going to use one of the most cutting-edge synthetic androgens that's currently being developed that in the beginning data is super suppressive on natural testosterone, and you're going to use Tribulus to bounce yourself back. Like, what I'm getting at, right, is you absolutely need a PCT with LGD-4033. I don't know why I got to say that. You know, something like 5 milligrams of MK2866 or 15 to 20 milligrams of S4. That's probably not going to shut your HPTA fully off. You're still going to have luteinizing hormone kicked on. You're still going to have follicle stimulating hormone kicked on. Something like LGD-4033. You can see it in the study. At 1 milligram, it's significantly suppressing natural testosterone. 1 milligram, right? Like I said, everyone goes with mostly 5 to 20 milligrams a day. Now, I've experimented, like I said, in the upper echelon dosages. I push the limits, and I will say it's super fucking suppressive. So definitely recommend a full PCT Sarm setup as far as a speed bump to help you restart your HPTA. So if you do not want to spend the money on clomiphene, enclomiphene, Nolvadex, or tormophene, don't run LGD-4033, right? If you don't have enough money to spend $30 to have a legitimate PCT, don't mess with LGD-4033, right? There's so many guys who come to me with this false information that they didn't need a PCT, and that, you know, I assume that their natural testosterone was like 400, 500. Boom. They add in the LGD-4033 only. They feel great for most of the cycle. And then week 6 hits, and then their testosterone is probably like 100. And they go to PCT with their little Tribulus thing from eBay that some dude sold them, doesn't give a shit about if their HPTA comes back or not. And they recover it to like 200. You know, I've seen this 1,000 times. If you're going to run and mess around with LGD, know you're messing around with a very serious synthetic androgen. And it's super suppressive. You know, I just can't believe in back when I first started this in like 2018, 2019, when I started putting myself out there on the internet, taking all this heat, you know, I could see why people thought you didn't need a PCT. The amount of false information out there was pretty unbelievable. Nowadays, I don't understand, other than sheer laziness, why you're not taking that cycle seriously. You know, something like RAD140, something like LGD-4033. These are suppressive to the point of regular steroids sometimes, if not more, right? So keep that into consideration. There was a German study done on RAD140 that was literally used as a male contraceptive, right? How does a male contraceptive work? They got shut down LH and FSH. Keep that in mind. So moving forward, right? I think LGD-4033 shines in a bulk. I think it shines on a baseline of testosterone personally, right? So if you did a base of 100 to 300, which is an elevated base of testosterone a week, and then added in your LGD on top, it would be a wet cycle, a cycle that you could really push the nutrients high, right? Amp up the caloric intake, and obviously amplify working volume significantly. And that's the biggest thing I noticed with LGD-4033 is that my pumps are brutal, and that, you know, I can do a ton of sets, right? I don't fatigue after one set, right? That's the big noticeable thing you should notice in the gym. Like if you normally rep 315, right? If you normally rep 315 for an easy set of 6, like you will not fatigue on your third set. You will still get 6. Like that is like the muscular endurance is there. The ability to increase working volume is there. So that's where it shines, and the pumps are crazy. Now, obviously, I've already mentioned the wet look, the water retention. That seems to do with potassium intake. I feel like, personally, for me, one of the biggest side effects I get with LGD-4033 is insane muscle cramping. So, like, I'll train chest, you know, I'll drive home, just me holding the steering wheel, I could Charlie horse my tricep. I'm that crampy. Now, the way I've solved this is by supplementing tons of tomato juice. So tomato juice is one of the most bioavailable ways to get in a shit ton of potassium. So that helped a lot. That fixed it, that mitigated it. But I have to drink like a gallon of tomato juice a day for like 5 days straight to really get the effect of not cramping at all anymore. And it's just a lot of tomato juice. But you could also supplement potassium. But that is, in my opinion, what we have all drawn the conclusion on why the water retention happens, because as we know, right, this is a SARM. This SARM doesn't convert to estrogen. The SARM doesn't convert to DHT. It's not causing estrogen bloat. So why is the water retention happening? Probably some electrolyte thing going on there. There's no concrete evidence on anything. That's just my theory. Now, moving into, what you should expect as far as stacking it with shit, right? You have to remember it's a SARM. You have to remember that LGD-4033 has an extremely high binding affinity. It's a full binder to the AR, right? It's not a partial. So keep that into consideration, that the LGD you add is automatically going to bind to the AR and beat all the roids you have, unless it's like something like trenbolone, but like it's going to beat the testosterone to the androgen receptors. So you have to keep that into consideration when you build your cycle, that if you're doing a gram of test with a high dosage of LGD, right, the LGD is going to beat that gram of test to the AR, which is going to cause way more estrogen or DHT conversion, which could leave you with gyno side effects, which could lead you with hair loss side effects, because you're having spillover. You're having, all this free testosterone floating around, converting, and then the other side effect with LGD is obviously it's going to crash sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG. So you have all this free testosterone not being transported around and just binding wherever and converting. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at that you should keep your testosterone dosage just as, homeostasis, baseline, to keep an estrogen conversion there. And then if you want to ramp the androgen to ramp your overall androgen level would be LGD-4033, because that's the one that has the highest binding affinity, right? You'd be using your testosterone for an estrogen conversion. So that's what I'm getting at, right? I'm getting at that, it doesn't it stacks, but it's not something like you want to add to a multi-compound cycle. It's something that you would add on a base of testosterone, and then the higher you ramp the LGD, the more results you get, if you can keep up with it calorically, right? I'll go into my experience with injectable administration now. So there's both oral and injectable administration found on the underground and online. Basically, with oral administration, they argue that the oral bioavailability of LGD-4033, don't ask me where they get these numbers, but they say it's around 40%, whereas injectable administration is around I believe like 80-ish percent. We'll just say like 60 to 70. So don't ask me where those numbers, those are just guesses, right? I'm not trying to be super factual on that. Just stating that injecting it, there's a lot of poise that, the binding affinity is way higher. You're avoiding that initial first bout through the liver. So overall less toxicity. So when I documented injectable LGD, that was the most insane fucking cycle I ever did. When I did the injectable LGD, the injectable YK11, and the MK677 with a baseline of 300 sustanon, that's the most crazy cycle I've done to date. I went from 220 to 250 stacked with veins. I have Dante throw up the video. That's one of my craziest looks ever I achieved. And I achieved those results in around 2-3 months. It was bonkers. I didn't film like how I ate to keep up with that, but it was like 4,000 to like 7,000 calories a day, like not lying. Like I was just stuffing my face to try and keep up with it. And I really didn't. I gained some body fat, obviously, but the LGD had my metabolic rate so high that I was just shredding through all that food. It was crazy. So, and I used the MK677 to hyperstimulate ghrelin, so I had elevated hunger hormone to even, try and keep up with that. But the results were crazy, right? I didn't need to do multiple compounds. Like, I just ramped the LGD up as that cycle went up. I kept my calories there. I didn't ramp up my testosterone. I kept the YK11 the same. All I did was ramp the LGD and got insane results. And then 2020 hit and I lost all my results. But that being said, right, if I would have cut back down directly off that cycle instead of coming off cold turkey into quarantine, I would have maintained a lot of that results. I would have not gained that much body fat for the amount of mass I gained. And I will say it's crazy. I wish there was a more hyper responder guy that would give one of these crazy injectable hybrid cycles a shot so you could see it in more of a hyper responder setting. But they're not that honest or open or willing to experiment, which is fine. But I just want to put my name behind that cycle was insane. That cycle was insane, and it proves the power of LGD-4033. And the main thing is, like, something like Dianabol, I might get more results out of Dianabol. I'm not here to bullshit. I'm not here to lie. But with the estrogen conversion of Dianabol, my blood pressure, it just gets so messed up. Whereas something like Injectable 4033, my resting heart rate might go up a little bit, but my blood pressure stays fine. I don't feel like I'm straining my system nearly as much as blasting something like D-bol. So, yeah, that's really, what I wanted to harp on is I think this, LGD 4033 is insane, both from the non-PD, category of like what SARMs are made for, right? It's being progressed through, it's succeeding in making it through all the trials. And then from the bodybuilding standpoint with the abuse category, I've had a lot of crazy results with it. Am I a fan of it? Do I normally go back to it? No. No, I don't like the look it gives me. I don't like the cramping, even though I solved that problem finally. I had that problem for a long time with it. Couldn't figure it out. Couldn't figure out why I was so puffy on it, even when I didn't eat that many carbs. But I can't deny the power. I can't deny the power that I can't deny the results I got from the injectable administration LGD 4033. It was definitely probably the craziest cycle ever was I've documented so far, and I will be documenting regular contest prep cycles later this year. But as far as an experiment that no one ever did, no one has even mimicked it online, honestly. I'd really like I said, for a hyper responder, maybe Dante in the background will fucking be the guinea pig as a hyper responder. But I really wish someone did, because the results I had were not a joke, comparable to a legitimate blast. And when you look at the overall milligram count I used with that cycle versus a traditional bulking cycle, I used overall way less milligrams, But we don't know the long-term implications, and at the end of the day, right, you still need to keep into consideration that LGD has a lot of the same side effects as regular gear, right? It's super suppressive. It doesn't really fit in that category that, my previous two videos on S4 and Osterine does, where like it doesn't fully shut off the HBTA in a respectful dosage, right? At 1 milligram, it's super suppressive, and you need to take a full PCT after. But it's the most popular SARM for a reason. It's definitely like, the results come. It's a wet look, and people who don't understand bodybuilding really, they're like, oh, when is it going to kick in? When do I feel it? Like, they notice it kick in because it's a wet look, right? It's not like a dry look where like, why isn't it working? Like, it produces visual results from the water retention increase pretty quickly, and if you can eat to keep up with it, significant results. And I don't need to prove that, right? There's plenty of guys in the comment section who are gonna be like, I've used real gear in the past, decided to go with LGD 4033, this shit's no joke. I've read tons of those comments, right? LGD 4033 is one of those ones that everyone's like, oh, some SARMs in a high enough dosage are pretty crazy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something. I will see you guys in my next video.